Alright, welcome guys to another Legion TD daily cast. So today Robie and Valred against SSP and Ceratosaurus. It's a probably missing match. Peoples are around 2.2, 2.3, almost 2.4k, so high elo there. Don't forget that tomorrow is the full release. And there's bound to be a lot of people there, so be sure to keep track of that. Also, there's the show match October 2nd at 18 CEST. A show match for the Shadow Cup using the rule between King Dan Saiyajin and Aviator Ashton. So don't miss it. The Shadow Cup event is, as seen above, between the 8th and the 10th of October, and the registration ends tomorrow. Right, let's focus on the game now. If Robie starting with Fire Elemental does receive 20 here. Didn't quite see if it was a snare or not. I'm quite sure for that. We did have a Priestess start on Valred. SSP going for the Oathbreaker Angler start, adding another one for this wave. With this positioning, I do believe this Angler will die before, just because the unit stops and then there's still units coming up and they wrap around the Chain Fist and attack the Angler. So normally that's the way they do it, but no, it's the back one. So the wrap around from the back one is more important than the others. So you have the back one taking targets, but then you have a partial focus from the front one. Oathbreaker as well on Ceratosaurus, but not with a Angler, so he does have more solid stuff for wave 3, which can be problematic for SSP if he doesn't have anything of value here. It does have the steed in the split, or a steed over there. He just needs to have some of the wave onto that steed. That's the key part. And also this steed will be able to buff the mana of those anglers. So pretty safe start here from Robie. Normally use a Windhawk, but Warwick is just more tank value. We'll be able to hold this 40 here quite easily. Ranger plus Peewee. Ranger is a bit overkill. You don't necessarily need to show it as early as that. It does allow him to counter the Blizzard here, so you'll be able to push to 6 worker quite easily. And here is what we said. Protect those anglers, get those mana up, and have some of the wave onto your Pegasus. This is the best you can do for wave 3. He might need to adjust for next wave, but he's gonna get a Bounty Hunter next wave. So let's see if the Bounty Hunter comes in. This one should be the Bounty Hunter, and here you go. So this wave you'll have the same scenario, but at least this one will be able to dish up damage and tank a little bit for the Oathbreaker when the sprint comes in. And it's a DT going on the way of SSP. The DT should be easily fend off. He is overvalued. He does have good damage here in the Bounty Hunter. Now let's see how it goes. SSP does go for a 60 income here onto this. Priestess does have a second Peewee here. Not much build here from Valred. Was already 7 workers, so acknowledging the fact that SSP probably not fully pushed here. Or maybe SSP putting too much praise onto Valred push and overbuilding for wave 4. A common wave to send onto the Priestess. But what do we have here? This is a leak, or close to. It is a leak to a single snail. And that's because the Priestess tanked a bit too much. The Ranger did not tank before the Priestess. The split was supposed to be fine. It's just you need the Ranger to be a little bit in the middle so that the split goes onto that Ranger before the Priestess. And it should have been a hold in that situation. But we do have big sense coming up onto Ruby. This will be a Hermit from Sarah. Hermit against Fire Elemental is quite good normally. But now that you have the Alpha Male, it should be easily dealt with because you have also the split. This split is quite important because it allows to bring back all of the back minions onto the Chain Fist here. And so when it wraps around, it goes on the Alpha Male and not the Fire Elemental. Now it's just a question to see if he is able to clear the boss before the Fire Elemental takes too much damage. But the Hermit is on the Alpha Male, so that's the best case scenario for Sarah. Sorry about that. There you go. Um, and so yeah, so the experimental will be able to survive this onslaught of this little scorpion. The hermit is not enough damage to go to bring that alpha male down, but here the 60 resend onto the priestess. And what's troubling Valred right now is that he lacks the front line. There's nothing to keep off the minions of the priestess. Priestess is the main damage. Yes, you have Daphne, but the Daphne is a support unit and not a damage unit. And so if you don't support with tanks, or if this doesn't tank for the priestess, which is your main damage, then you can often be in trouble. You do have the even split here coming up. This should be able to clear the tree. Oracle coming on that wave. The snail will go on the side of the overbreak of the golden bucklers. But it's only income from SSP, only income from Ceratosaurus. But the big sends are coming from Robie and Valred. There's going to be one brute, two snails onto the bounty hunter. Does have the Pegasus though. So that's a lot of damage and a lot of tank value. It depends on how well this does to kill the wave. The Chain Fist, however, does not survive. The Bounty Hunter is taking a bit of damage now. Do have a nice shared aggro, but the Pegasus is taking too much of a beating. And you do have the 150 stacks on the Bounty Hunter anyhow. But looking at Ceratosaurus, the two brutes here with the Snell, it seems to be too much here, despite him having the Yozora supported by the Washroom. So big leaks on SSP and Ceratosaurus. Two brutes on the king. This one is pretty low, so this should be dealt with pretty easily. And brutes do a lot of damage early on to the king. But the worker game pretty much even. Only SSP falling a bit behind because he is playing the antlers. So he's all about the support and protecting it. But now he has a problem that is Bounty Hunter is max stack but cannot do anything with it. He cannot upgrade it yet, so he's forced to like push workers, play around those anglers, and try to like this angler gonna be full stack, cannot go for the bounty hunter as well. So a little bit of wasted potential. Like yes, he is close to value, but this value is pretty weak on this wave, and that's why you see Robie going for another brute here. He recognized that SSP, if he wants to stay in the game, he needs to push worker. This means he cannot get the Kingpin, and so a recent here with the Brute and Snell is the better play. If SSP would have went for the Kingpin, this would have been still fine, because at least you know that SSP is on low workers to afford that. But let's see, the Pegasus is tanking. It cannot give any more mana to the Bounty Hunter, but the crucial part is that the Bounty Hunter needs to survive here. If he wants to have any chance of holding, this needs to survive. And as of now, looks like there's two big sludge going onto it, and then yes, this will be a leak from SSP. This is not enough tank value, not enough damage to kill the rest of the sludges, and so it will be a leak from SSP. But he's still pushing those workers, so he's delaying the Kingpin, but that's not what you want to see here. The more you delay the Kingpin, the more you will struggle. So staying a little bit lower on value, get your Kingpin on 8, and then you can push. It's all about the early timing of the Kingpin, how and when do you get it. But SSP going to 9 workers instead, and so favoring the push instead of anything. But Robie should be sending income here exactly, and this will be again a leak on SSP. It is a rough position, but now that is how we will see how he deals with it. Now he gets the second bounty hunter. He has some pierce damage, but now at coming up with 8, pretty low value on the attack damage because it has the slow attack speed as well as a low base damage. Looking at the other side, we do have the boar from Ceratosaurus does have to face a mole. There's the Daphne, but it's all a question of if this boar and this Yozora can buy enough time for the Daphne to kill most of the wave. But big sense coming onto Valred and Robie as well. We do have Mole Hermit against the Bunk here. Should do pretty well. At least it has a chance to do pretty well. And on Robie, Mole Hermit as well. But there's a Disciple here, killing the Mole quite easily. But the Aquas will be dying. So it's all a question of if the alpha male is able to hold long enough as well as this steed. And looks like it will be close to a hold, if not a hold from Robie. It is indeed a hold. It is a leak on the priestess player. Ceratosaurus is leaking. The Daphne did not have enough time from the boar and the Yozora, and on the side of SSP, it is indeed a leak to the income send of Robie. That is a danger we discussed of how you delay your kingpin, you don't get the bonus damage, and so you are in risk of leaking. This is a lot of king damage. This should be very close to game here at 59%. They do have some king attacks. If it is not game, they are very close to dying. So 10%, 8%, 5% is the waters we are looking at. And it should be a little bit higher than that. 18, 15? 15%. Alright, so a bit less damage than I expected, but still pretty much a lot of punishment. He needs that kingpin now. He doesn't get it. He cannot get it. He doesn't have enough gold. So what are his options now? Yeah, that's pretty much selling. He has to get it. He doesn't have a choice. He's fallen too far behind here. Robie is snowballing at 16 workers, not feeling pressure any pressure at all after holding this massive send on wave 8. He continuously was able to leak SSP, delaying the kingpin and making doubt on when to upgrade it. But now this is where it is crucial for the kingpin player. How do you come back into the game? Now you use that gold, you fully push, and then you try to pressure your opponent hard enough for them to send you on wave 12. The problem is that Valred and Robie are quite strong on wave 12 themselves. Robie is also having a composition that is very good on wave 13 with a Star Carter in Steed. And in the late game, you can pair that with a Boar, which is massive in the front line. So only king ups here from SSP, king ups from Ceratosaurus as well, trying to scale. They know they need to make something happen here, and that's what they're going to try with the kingpin. Possibly a heavy push here, or maybe the bounty hunter. Okay, bounty hunter, and then push the rest, or higher spell. Okay, trying to protect that kingpin as much as possible for wave 10, get the most damage out of it. But now there's a lot of assault, right, present in this. So you have two choices. Either you want to try and push heavily and punish them on wave 12, which can be hard due to the Haven possibility as well as the Aqua's Alpha Mill, or you go for investment and bring that late. You do have a lot of value generated through those kingpins, but you're lacking in workers. So at one point you will need to try to go for a leak, especially on Robie. And looking at Robie, it doesn't seem to have a definite weak wave, except if you try for a massive send on wave 12. But for that, you need to be pushed way more than they are right now. A lot of single target damage on Valred, but can be dead to a 4-eye, let's say. They do decide to go for income. They don't try to go for a break. And so this means we should see the investment coming up from SSP and Ceratosaurus. But Sarah did not go for income sense here. He does have the boars. He's not spending the lithium yet. We do have Titan on him. So I would use Titan on one of the board right away, especially if he's expecting a send here. And what is SSP taking here? I do think investment is the better play for him. But let's see what he decides. It's only income towards SSP with king ups. And I've already sending full onto Sarah. And Sarah is not sending any Mithium. Thus plays the Titan on the board, meaning there's a lot of tank value onto that. And one board onto the front line and the other onto wave. That's probably the best case scenario for him. That's very rare to see, but it does happen from time to time. Does have good DPS in the Millennium, but it is far from perfect, especially when your front line is already dead. The two boars already dead, so not the best situation, of course, but he will be able to clear most of the wave and should be covered in the middle from a speed. Going for the Titan and not the investment, so not going for scaling, going for defensive option. So now looking at this, it does seem that they want to try for something like 13 because they see the great board, they see the front line only weak on both sides on wave 13. So this could be something to do. or they try for 14. But I do think they will try to go for a 13 to first of all protect SSP. If you can protect SSP with extra income, then he might be able to be in a good position for late game, especially since he has gates and growl that can be paired with those kingpins as well. And this is almost a full cover. This is only one hit for the king though, so not the end of the world. Some king damage, but not a massive amount. And now we do have SSP taking the worker lead compared to Robie, but does struggle in value right now compared to Robie. We're talking about, well, not that far behind, only 100 gold behind. And that's where investment is going to shine over Titan, because the more the game drags on, the better the money will be from Robie than from SSP. And we can already see it here, like 100 income difference from Robie to SSP does say to you that that is pretty much a lopsided income game. Valred did sacrifice some of his income to leak Ceratosaurus, um, but did not result into any kind of king damage. So no sense on SSP on wave 12, no sense on Ceratosaurus does mean that there is a high probability of seeing wave 13 to be the play. And I do think that everybody will try to go for it. SSP did not fully build here, and they're skipping, so they are respecting the Azeria and the Lost Chieftain from Valred. They are respecting the Pegasus Starcutter from um, Robie, but if you skip 13, then it has to be 15. You cannot go 14 against this board, it's too tanky, especially with those Pegasus behind, way too tanky. So you want to have a high impact wave, which is wave 15 on that case. But let's see how they do against this Sen, because yes, we have 2 gates on SSP, but there's still no buffs onto them. They are buffed onto from the steeds, sorry. And so there will be more summons, but those are very small gates. We do have the ogre coming up to take care of those great boars, but there's a doomsday doing work onto the wave, and it should be a very close to a hold here. What do we have? The gates are doing work here. This steed did die, and we are only missing one golem to be killed with a 4-eye. Maybe this will be a leak. One golem only on that side. The last summons are just barely popping in, and so this will only be a 4-eye to the king with a single golem, so they survive yet again. They have the Mythium lead now, and they decide to go for 14, and that, I think, is a mistake. It's a mistake against Robie. It's not a mistake against Valred. Don't get me wrong, Valred is very, very weak on 14, so it might turn out to be very, very good, and both are going for the exact same set. I like the siege ram against all those range damage. Kraken could have worked as well, but with the ram, they were able to get the pack leader as well. So more borers coming from Robie. This is a large, large front line, and the base damage that he needs is all in here. It's all on the Star Carter. You don't need much more than that. All the mana goes onto the Star Carter, and that's becoming something that has insane DPS on the wave, because there's no buffer between the abilities except the attack speed, I do believe. You see, there's 2 spells coming up. Every time there's the mana, there's another spell. So it's very, very important. There's the attack in between as well. So it's almost 1 spell per attack. Like, it's not even close here. I do think this will result into a hold, and it will indeed. But Valred, as we discussed, was pretty weak here. The damage is all magic. The siege ram is perfect to counter them as well. They are all ranged, and so very, very big leak. And now you do have less mana regeneration on the Star Carter because the steeds are dead. So it will result into some king damage, but nowhere near what they took early on. Ceratosaurus does have a hard game here, falling behind in the power score compared to the others. But it's all about SSP now. He is pushing heavily. they are trying to win the game through Valred here, and so they want to put as much pressure as possible on Valred. And looking at what has been shown, wave 16 seems to be the play. Robie will be quite strong here, despite having those front line that are pretty weak on TD attack type, just because the wave is so big that the damage is more impactful on those boars on that specific wave. So will be problematic to leak Robie. He's even saving gold while being overvalued. He's waiting on those 2 times worker. He knows that if he scales enough with his build, he's gonna cover everything, no matter the size of the sand, because of the power of the high DPS and high tank value of those boars. SSP for himself, it's all about those gates. He needs to be able to have enough summons in a short amount of time to be able to carry this. Ceratosaurus only needs to survive here. Does have the boars, does have the Ceeezor as well. Very good setup for wave 21. He just doesn't have the value or the income for that. SSP struggling to kill wave 15 here because of the high push. Was it intentional? Was it not? I do think it was in between. I don't think he wanted to leak that much, but I do think that he wanted the time to make use of this 25 workers and try to leak Robie and Valred. But as we discussed, Robie was overvalued. He was shifting to more than 200 gold here and was still able to hold here, meaning that he's gonna have 2 more red eyes with another rogue wave or maybe another star color circle. I do think there's way more value into having a red eye. Yes, exactly. Robie, you got it. Because of the splash damage. The splash damage and the slow of that unit just increases so much with the upgrades. 12, it passes from 8% slow to 20% slow. And that is a huge, huge difference in that single upgrade. And even though you don't necessarily like the boar for the damage, the attack speed slow is so valuable. But let's see how the aura sends are doing for SSP and Ceratosaurus against Robie and Valred. Looking at the value, we do have overvalued from Robie and undervalued from Valred, so Valred probably leaking here. But there's nothing to kill the Haven, and that's the biggest problem with the Send of SSP. Yes, the auras are pretty good overall, but it takes a very long time to kill the Bunk. But look at this, the Steeds are still very well alive. You still have your DPS here, the Starcrawler, and here you go, it's just not even a sweat broken by Robie. Can he cover some of the leak of Valred? That is a big, big question. So Valred will be taking place into the last place in the power score. And does allow a chance for Ceratosaurus to come back a little bit. At one point, you do have Ceratosaurus having to suicide. That means push heavily on workers. And that's what he's doing right now. He's pushing heavily on workers. And that's before receiving the send from Robie and Valred. And they are skipping wave 17. They want to go for 18. And this, yeah, the push is a correct play here. If they want to have any chance of winning here, they need to have the correct send against Robie. And it is counterintuitive, but a better send against Robie is double Centaur. And you might ask why. Normally you see, well, Shaman Centaur could be better, but the problem here is not the Star Carter. The problem is the steed is buffing the Star Carter. It just brings about the spell that does percent base damage, too much, so much often that it kills pretty much anything. And so if you kill those mana generating units, despite having a fortified frontline, that is the correct play. So let's see here. We do have SSP should be holding with his massive Kingpin army with the gates as well. We do have a decent hold, but we want to see a leak here from Ceratosaurus. If there's no leak, then the high worker amount that he has will not take into effect much. And yes, it is a leak here. Maybe a bit bigger than you wanted. Maybe you wanted those two. And that could have been very much possible. And now this will be a cover. We do have sends coming up from everybody. I don't like the Kraken here. I do not like it. Yes, resisting the damage is very good sometimes, but you need to deal with those steeds. If you don't deal with those steeds, you are in big trouble. Sorry about the lag. And here you go. It should be back here. Yes, everything is fine. No. Yes, yes, maybe. Okay, sorry. Okay, so 18 comes. We do have a lot of chieftains. You know what? I would have loved to see that Kraken from SSP because you need to delay those. That is the only way. Because now you have Daphnes, you have a lot of magic damage, and you're buffing a single big unit. And so this means, oh, he's buffing the Peewee here, and maybe he was expecting a 4-eye. Could have a fair assessment. But that's like 1k sent onto SSP from Robie. He was heavily pushed, he was saving, and he realized that also Sarah was was pushing heavily against him, so he pushed back in Ansa. So it's pretty much a question of, well, it was supposed to be a question of if Robie leaks, if SSP holds, but both of Varred and Robie are holding, and both Ceratosaurus and SSP are leaking. And this leak is enough to finish up the king despite the upgrades, and we will see Robie and Varred take it against SSP and Ceratosaurus. And so uh, that is the thing. When you have an early lead, you try to keep ahead, and that's what Robie and Varred tried to do, and that's exactly how Robie did. So you see Robie not afraid to go for income sense here. He realizes he's against sending into a Kingpin player. Kingpin player tends to play safer in terms of workers, especially with paired with steeds. The problem is that at one point, if they want a Kingpin early, they need to shift an amount of gold, so you don't leave any breathing room for them. You send wave after wave after wave, and you keep track of what they build. If they build on wave 5, that means they didn't shift here, so they cannot get a Kingpin. And there's no big leaks on your part, so this means they cannot get it either. So this means that he's gonna have something else for wave 6, meaning that he will be vulnerable to seeing what he has. And he does have the Pegasus, but it's a back one. Doesn't get the defense upgrade, doesn't get the attack self buff either. And so this means that he doesn't have damage and doesn't have resistance for that wave either. And what he should have done at one point is to put down the crawl. Like on wave 5, put down the crawl, and then you can go for the Kingpin. It was the problem is that yes, he wanted to accelerate his bounty hunter play, but he wanted it too much here. There was a save. Ceratosaurus was not looking the best. He was getting saved on. It wasn't looking pretty on value. That's what I must say. He pushed to 7 workers off that 40, so that's risky at first, and then the long save comes. He doesn't have a clear answer, and that means he's vulnerable to roots, as we saw here. And so uh, as you receive more sends, a single root shouldn't leak you here, especially when you're overvalued here. And maybe he felt overconfident with this value, but it's just so much poor value in that wave. This takes extra damage, everything takes extra damage from the wave damage. And everything does reduce damage except those steeds onto the wave. And so it's not a perfect setup. He has way less value than that. And that was the biggest problem. You leak here, you're going to leak again on wave 7 because you try to keep up in workers and you cannot get your Kingpin. And then the next problem comes, you leak here, and then you leak again when your opponent, your Varred is saving onto Ceratosaurus. And it's just this almost this is the nail in the coffin. Like, yes, this is not real big of an issue because it's expected from the Kingpin player to leak on that wave. He had a way out of it, just didn't go for it. And even here, like instead of pushing those worker, get your Kingpin. Like, yes, you're gonna be slower in the worker game, but if you continue leaking, you're just giving time for the opponent to leak your guy even more. And Sarah is very pushing aggressively despite leaking that much here. Feeling confident. Well, he was pretty much under. He did shift here to his defense, but yeah, minus 170, minus 65, still no Kingpin. And that's why normally the first Kingpin when playing a Steed, must not be full stack. If it is full stack, the opponent did a mistake. That's mostly it. You need to accept that, yeah, it's gonna be 100 stack. It's still fine. On wave 6 with those steeds. I accept that. With 100 stacks, you're able to fend off any sends that comes on wave 6. You're vulnerable on wave 7 if they don't send, but it gives you at least a big tank if you want to add some damage. You can wait to push and stuff like that. Like, you accept that you are low workers, you wait for that kingpin, and then when you receive your next send, you're able to push. And that's normally how you want to see it and how you want to play it. But very well played by Robie, leaving no breathing room from SSP, no windows of opportunity to shift. And he was even forced to sell those Chain Fists in the split to get it on wave 9. So on that, gonna say thank you for watching. I hope you liked it, and hope it helped any bounty hunter player as well out there. So see ya.